I would like to welcome you to the Youth Gone Mild podcast. I am your host, Gen X Joe. And if you're wondering what this podcast is all about, now I'm sure most of you know it's music-based, 80s, 90s, and now modern rock, where I interview legends, icons, and new blood. And you may think it's really cool, and I got to admit, it is really cool, but it does take a toll on you. And I'm only going to speak for myself because I have guests on here today in a crossover podcast with two of my really good friends, Rich Urick and Mike Smith of the Lights, Camera, Pop podcast. And what I mean by taking a toll, sometimes it takes away from family time or cuts into family time. And when I started this podcast, I never imagined that would be the case. Now, I'm not going to say unfortunately it is, because I'm actually fortunate enough to be having this podcast over 40 episodes from when I started it as the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast to now the Youth Gone Mild podcast. Now, you can call this me just living out my teenage fantasies of being a rock star or hanging with rock stars. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not at the point where I want to admit that yet. Maybe you want to call it an obsession. Okay. I'm obsessed with podcasting. Me, personally, looking at the whole picture, I'm looking at it as a hobby. Something to take my mind away from the daily grind of being a provider for my family. We all need that in some shape or form. And I'm not going to speak for Rich or Mike because we're cross podcasting and they're doing their thing and I'm doing mine with the opening. When you get to a certain age and the people who really know you, I mean the people who really know you, before you had any idea of what you were going to be doing in your life, these two guys are included in my friend circle. Mike and I, we go way back to middle school. And Rich and Mike and I also went to college together. And those two, I am going to use the word, got me hooked, got me addicted, got me obsessed. But it's still a hobby with podcasting. And I owe them a lot. These two guys are my hype guys. But you know what? I'm their hype guy too. And there's no time like right now to hype these guys up with their podcast, Lights, Camera, Pop. It is a show dedicated to all things that made our 80s and 90s childhood worth surviving, such as movies, television shows, cartoons, comic books, toys, and even music. That whole beautiful but yet ridiculous pop culture universe that basically raised us when our parents weren't looking. These are my guys, Rich Urick and Mike Smith, and I am going to welcome them with open arms to the Youth Gone Mild podcast.
Hey guys, I am Rich, with the kind of the creator, I guess, if you will, of Lights, Camera, Pop. Sorry, tongue's a little bigger than the mouth sometimes, and brain moves faster than the mouth as well. But yeah, one of the dynamic duo of Lights, Camera, Pop.
Yeah, Rich is the wizard behind the scenes. I'm Mike. I just talk. I have no real discernible talent other than that.
See, I disagree. I disagree because, but you are just as much as a co-creator of the show. It wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for your element as well. So, I
Thank you.
don't. No, thank you, because I tried to do this by myself and it's not fun.
Well, if I could interject, I want to say you guys are the key for me to having a podcast, because without you two, there would be no, first off, Gen X Marks the Spot podcast, and now the Youth Gone Mild podcast, because when I guest on your show, I forget when that was, maybe August, September. I'm not sure when Ozzy died, but you asked if I wanted to be on your show
Mhm.
because of my knowledge of rock and metal. I jumped at the chance because I don't know if anybody knows this, and they probably don't, but the three of us go way back.
Way back.
Mike and I go back even further to
Right.
middle school and high school, but Rich and Mike and I go back to our Power 92 radio days at Cal U, the Harvard on the Mon, and
The good old days.
absolutely, man, what I wouldn't give to go back to just one of those days.
And I really appreciate you like bringing that up. It's very rare because I don't think Mike and I we never kind of like look at ourselves as pioneers or innovators or anybody who reaches out to anybody. No, I don't think that, because a lot of the times I feel like what we do is more or less what you see at 6 o'clock in the morning McDonald's run, and you see a bunch of old timers just sitting there talking about the good old days on how good they had it under Nixon. And I just
Yeah.
I can't, like, that's kind of like where I feel like we're at, where it's just like we just kind of talk about things that we enjoy, and this is our McDonald's. This is our sitting around and bullshitting.
Our podcast literally is the verbal version of, hey, grab a handful of spaghetti and throw it at the wall and see what sticks. That's our philosophy for our podcast.
Agreed.
Well, why don't you let the audience know what exactly it is that Lights Camera Pop does talk about, because you guys are making it out that it's loosey goosey, and it's really not. Because I love listening to your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I really appreciate it. Go ahead, Mike.
How I describe it, whenever I try to pitch it for somebody to be on the show, I just say we do, me and my buddy Rich, we do a show called Lights Camera Pop, and it's just what it sounds like. It's mostly about pop culture, and we talk about everything from film, TV, comics, art, religion, whatever. Not really religion, but and we try to do it very conversationally. Take for example, like if we're talking to I don't know, say a comic book artist or something like that. I'm like, I don't care what you did with Batman. I don't care what you did with the X-Men. I don't care what you did with whatever comic book. We want to hear what you want to talk about, what makes you passionate. If you want to talk about your mom's favorite pot roast recipe, yeah, and then that usually breaks the ice, and then you can just hear whenever we do have guests on, we don't talk all about the one aspect of their life. We try to let them be the helm of the ship, and we just kind of nudge,
steer it a little bit.
We want the story to go. Now, we do make a conscious effort to stay away from politics, because let's face it, politics and religion is a third rail. And we don't want to alienate anybody. We don't want to anger anybody. We want our show to be fun and lighthearted, but we still feel that if it's in the air, we should probably just at least brush it.
We're not interviewing you. We don't want to give you we don't want to be like Letterman or Fallon or Leno or whatever. We want to kind of just have a conversation with you, sit down, a couple of guys, and sure, we're gonna ask you and talk to you about your career for the most part,
Right.
But at the same time, we're not gonna dwell on it, because we know that they've been asked or talked about, if, for example, we had Stan Lee. I know that's a little hard to do right now, but just for example, if we had Stan Lee on the show, we're not going to ask him,
Get the Ouija board.
Yeah, we're not going to ask him about how he came up with Spider-Man or how he came up with Fantastic Four, because those are questions that they've always been asked, and they've probably been downtrodden with so many of these questions that it feels very just fake for us to really talk like that to them.
And then you're just going to be getting the same answer from them over and over and over again. Something that you can hear on every other podcast or every other interview on YouTube or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the same old answers and the same old questions, and I can totally relate, because, and this is kind of going to bring us into our topic today of what guest did we, and we're not going to name names, of course, but what guest or how did certain interviews go. You went in with a plan and it turned out nothing like what you envisioned, whether it was a great interview or two, man, I thought this was going to be a great interview and it absolutely sucked, because there are times when I will go into an interview and of course, like you guys said, I have my questions that I want to ask. And then, just like any good podcaster like you guys as well would do, you just follow it up on the cuff.
Hmm.
So there are times when that absolutely doesn't happen. You just got to lead them to the water and to the trough. And, oh, it's just agonizing.
And it's like the old saying that our parents told us, and then we pass on to our kids, is you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink. Like I don't think we've really had any like crazy guests. I don't think anything really
No.
crazy or bad has happened or anything like that. I mean, we've had some great guests. I think probably one of the worst moments though was a few episodes ago that we had, and everything was just a train wreck from the beginning because there were like technical issues with sound, from the sound to the mic cutting out to the recording stop, and everything was just a nightmare. But once we got the ball rolling, once we got it back on track, everything was good. But we for the most part, we've had some really good guests, and I could be very thankful for that. However, in the past, so I had done a horror show before Lights Camera Pop, and there's a band. So like I think at the time I was just more or less like excited just to have these guys on the show, and they were a horror band, so they fit the criteria of at least the show. They were on a record label that I supported and kind of worked for on the street team. So I don't even say pressure, but I had all this built up hype that I was so excited because all of my interviews went well before. And then when I talked to them, they were the most boring group I have ever talked to. They were just very short, one sided. They almost felt like I was inferior, and it like messed me up. And it was just, I never put out that episode. I still have it on my laptop. I never put out that episode.
And Rich, you and I did have this conversation
Yeah,
about a certain lead singer of a very popular 80s band that I did interview, and I did put the podcast out,
hmm
but I also did a little bit of editing because he sounded really condescending. And it just made me feel like, I was inferior as well, and that he was doing me a favor. And maybe he was. Okay, let's just say he was. But still, be professional about
absolutely.
Oh
it.
yeah.
We're on the topic now of things that could go wrong for a podcast. And if it sounds like I'm out of breath and you hear dogs barking, I am out walking doing this podcast because I did not have access
Look at you
to my
multitasking.
studio.
I don't have access to mine yet either. I'm doing mine from my bedroom right now.
Hey,
Are you clothed?
What do you think? No.
It's not what I think, it's what I'm imagining. But anyway, back to
Why
the
would I
topic
be?
at hand.
I don't know.
Why
You got
would I
me
be
cuckoo
clothed?
for Cocoa Puffs. Have you ever tried to reach out to a guest and then them just kind of be kind of like a snarky little twit towards you? Maybe that's such a harsh word to say, but just really snarky and just kind of like full of themselves in a sense.
Yes, a popular 80s band member, not the same person I'm talking about, but, they had some really big top 10 hits in the 80s and through the early 90s. And, I asked if they would like to be a guest on my show. This is when I was first starting out, of course, with the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast. And they didn't ask about numbers or ratings or followers or anything like that. They were just kind of like, well, why would I want to be on your show? And I would give them an answer, and then they would come back with something real snarky, and I'm just like, you know what? Screw it, man. You kind of just ruined that for me being a fan of yours. But I will tell you, and I think I know where you were going with this, Rich, because this was another topic that came about and we were discussing, or another guest, I should say, that we were talking about and discussing. It wasn't a rock singer or an artist that I reached out to. It was a Hollywood actor. And this person was one of my childhood idols. The timing, I don't know if it was bad or what was going on in their personal life or anything like that, but I made a few phone calls to people that I knew, and I was able to get an email and a personal phone number of this Hollywood legend through these contacts, and I had emails to back it up. They said, well, after this person gets back in the country, all you got to do is reach out to them on the phone and set up a date and time. Everything's good to go. Perfect. That's what I did. Well, this turned into such a clusterfuck that the person actually, or I should say, the actor actually texted me or had someone text me from a private number and asked me where I got all the email addresses and all the phone numbers, especially his from. Now, here's my situation. I had assumed everything was set up and ready to go because the people that I contacted were in the know with him.
Yeah.
And to make a very long story short, he wanted me to throw his, I'll say, counterparts under the bus. And I wasn't going to do that. So I took all the heat from it. Now, whether I should have done that or not, I don't know. I thought it was the right decision to make because everybody makes mistakes. Wires get crossed. But I was not going to throw some of his closest, and I'll even go far as saying friends, under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it kind of ruined it for me, especially when he says, hey, fan or not, in a roundabout way, lose this number.
Yeah, that's wild. That's kind of crazy.
You did the right thing. You did the right thing. And
Absolutely.
In my opinion, that's almost like it's the equivalent of a journalist not giving up their sources.
I had a kid,
and I actually had another opportunity right after that, just a few months ago, to meet that particular actor at we'll just say, because I don't want to give the location
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the event was away because it could be pinpointed. But I had the opportunity to meet this person, and I have met this person in the past, from youth all the way up to adulthood, and never had anything but great things to say about this person. But I chose not to because it still got to me like, I'm this 8-year-old kid watching them on TV and they're still my hero, but yet they committed this act of treason or whatever you want to call it that I cannot forgive them for.
Yeah, it makes it rough.
Well, you don't want to go and also you don't really want to sully the rest of the memories that you have, the good memories that you have with them. And let's face it, I mean, sometimes celebrities really do want to kind of cloister themselves when it comes to their personal information, cell phones, home address, etc. Because there are crazy people out there. You know what I mean? And in this person's defense, he doesn't know if you're a fan, a super fan, or some dude that wants to wear a skin like a suit.
Well, I mean, not like that, of course. I mean, I would want to brush against it maybe a little bit, but
It's just like going out for pizza. You know what I mean? 9 out of 10 times you're gonna have a good pizza, but that one day you're gonna get a burnt one. It's gonna suck. You know what I mean? So chalk it up to being.
I got burnt on that one. That's for sure.
Yeah. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, no. I appreciate the kind words too, because yeah, and I agree. I did do the right thing and such, but I mean, there's always problems when doing podcasts. I mean, whether it's from the celebrity to the host, or
Oh
to
yeah,
just equipment malfunction, like you said earlier, or just things that are uncontrollable at the moment, and
Hmm.
you have this blank look of what the fuck just happened.
But it's
right.
You were doing
still
such a great podcast, and then you have to, get back in touch with the guest, and then if they're like only gave you like, or if they only gave you like 30 minutes, and you're at that 25th minute mark, and shit goes sideways,
Mhm.
and you wanted to wrap it up, you got to call them, and that has happened to me a couple of times where I had to do a Zoom interview, but the power went out, believe it or not, at one of the guest homes during a thunderstorm, and there was just no ending to the podcast. I mean, it was just boom, where do you leave off at?
Right.
And
Right.
luckily, the person has got in touch with me about a half hour later and was like, "Hey, here's my cell phone, and call me tomorrow and we'll finish the podcast." Super cool dude.
That's
Now
awesome.
that's
Knew that,
awesome.
yeah, knew that it needed finished, didn't want to leave me hanging. And I totally have mad respect for this musician. And actually, we stay in touch to this day. And, when I was going into doing a podcast, and I know you guys are the same way, you know that if you get a phone number or an email from someone who, is well respected, pretty popular in whatever industry they're in, the one thing you don't want to do is reach out to them when you don't mean to. You don't want to bug them and pretend like you're stalking them. And I think
Exactly right.
that's where the respect comes into play. Only talk to them when you have to, and then it kind of just flows into a friendship, or um,
Right.
what's another word I'm looking
A
for? Not
mutual
maybe not
respect.
friendship, mutual
A mu-
respect.
An
Thank you.
yeah.
acquaintance. Yeah, I think that just having guests like that and being more personable and relatable to you, I think that's really, really important.
Joe,
Go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
what was your favorite guest that you have? Since it's your favorite guest, or you can say the name. Like what was
Well,
what was like one that you had on that you were just like, this is great, this is awesome, I can't believe I had
well, I'm not going to give the ass kissing answer that I should give. Um, there are a lot of really cool guests that I've had on my show. Believe it or not, I'm not going to say my favorite guest because I do have several favorites, but I would say the best podcast interview, okay,
Hmm.
was recently, because everything went smooth as it could have gone. Production, the interview, the
Hmm.
editing, you name it, it went smoothly. And that was just a few weeks back with Jake Curtis Allard, the guitarist for Pretty Boy Floyd. I even got a lot of feedback from the Pretty Boy Floyd camp saying how well the interview was, the production. They
That's
loved
awesome.
the theme song that I had and such. And that was for the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast. And of course, now I rebranded to the Youth Gone Mild podcast. But I would say that was my favorite interview. I mean, it was just smooth, transitional, and very informative. And like you guys said earlier, it was just a casual conversation that actually led into everything I wanted to ask him without having to ask him.
It's always a great interview and a great conversation when everything just falls into place.
All right, Rich, what's yours? What's yours? I want to hear what out of the
Oh,
ones that we've done together.
Wait, I know, guys. I already know the answer. It was when I was on there talking about Ozzy.
you know what? That is definitely in our top three.
No,
um,
seriously, out of all the ones that
Sure,
just
it is.
not your horror of it all stuff, just the ones
just
that you and
us,
I have
yes.
done.
Patricia Pat's was phenomenal. She's like literally someone that I feel like I could be friends with, like outside of.
On a personal level. Yeah.
Yes. Keith Coogan from Adventures in Babysitting, our very first guest on the show.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was fun. That was really good. I enjoyed that one a lot. But
And that was
honestly,
a long one too.
that
'cause
was a
he
long
like,
one.
really good.
Yeah. Like right now, I think my favorite episode was with Mark McKenna.
Funny you say that, because that was mine. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, the Mark McKenna episode right now, is I think my favorite episode that we've done. Not because like all our other guests, I'm not saying all our other guests have been great. Like Jay was hysterical when we talked about records
Jay
and
was awesome.
shows. Trisha's phenomenal. I mean, like, she's the national treasure. I don't give a shit what anybody
Mark,
says.
Brandon.
You know, I mean, like all of them have been just awesome. But Mark was just cool, and like the stuff that he talked about, and the little bit of nuance and insight the behind the curtains, if you will, of the comic book industry, and then just all the cool stuff. And he was just such a nice guy.
I loved hearing about the inspirational drive that he had.
Yes,
to break into this industry, and
the fact that he was just like, I'm not giving up. This is what I want to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was just
awesome, guys.
It was just gold.
And so I am curious, Joe. So I want to ask too, is the name change, the rebrand. So originally, when Gen X Marks the Spot hit, I remember we talked at Walmart, and we talked, and your show was originally going to be one thing, and then it shifted into something completely different. Which, while the original concept was going to would have been great, I feel that the direction it went is much better, and it suits you much better. And I feel like the original concept almost would have come off as like a dare I say a grumpy old man kind of like vibe. It could only go so far in a sense, and it would really kind of be one-sided. But with the direction that it went musically and just the way you present it's legit perfect, and you do an amazing job. And a big congratulations to you on the sponsor, man. Like when I saw that,
congratulations on that.
I saw that, and then I think it may have happened at the same time that Mike saw at the same time, and then he texted me as I'm looking at it on Facebook, and he goes, "Hey, did you see Joe got a sponsor?" So yeah,
he froze. You know, I realize every time I walk past my house, it connects to my Wi-Fi, and you guys freeze.
Oh, so what did you hear? You didn't hear us waxing your car, did you?
I heard you waxing something I had. But no, you were saying about the podcast, and you know, and I was going to follow that up. And what I'm going to say with that is, and just so everybody might have an idea of what the Gen X Marks the Spot podcast was going to be like, was it was going to be about a time, whether it's in the present or, you know, 10 or 20 years ago, when something changed in the landscape of America that, you know, wasn't happening, you know, during our youth of Gen X. What's a good example without me not getting in trouble? So, for instance, when did emotional support animals get to be allowed in, let's say, Walmart or a restaurant? And I'm not dissing anybody with a service pet, okay? But I'm talking about an emotional support pet, someone who may not have a disability per se. You know, I don't want to walk into Walmart, and you guys know, because we're both local, or all three of us are local, that they actually had a alligator in Walmart that was an emotional support pet. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? This is ridiculous. This is all for attention. That was some of the things that we were going to pinpoint. When did this become a thing that rules weren't meant to be followed anymore? Just for an example like that.
Yeah.
But now, and how to answer that question for you is, when did it take a turn to me interviewing artists and rock singers? It was actually the very first episode, because going back to that concept of service animals and emotional support animals, I interviewed Stacy Blades of LA Guns, and he's big into pets, and we were actually going to have that conversation, and he knew that, and he was really cool with that. But at that time, when the interview came up, Ace Frehley had died, and we just shifted gears and we talked about Ace and what he meant to the music industry.
Mm.
And after the interview, and then I started pigeonholing myself, only talking to Gen X rock stars of the 80s and early 90s. And I got to thinking, I'm getting some modern bands that want to be on my show, some bands that are out there today and making waves, like Bad Marriage, Gunshine, The Fell. You name these bands, and they wanted to be on my show, and I'm like, hell yeah! But I pigeonholed myself with the name, so I came up with the idea of the Youth Gone Mild, because it's a play off of Skid Row's Youth Gone Wild, but I still have that youthful mind, that youthful sense of humor. We aren't as wild as we used to be. We're a little bit milder, and besides being a dad, I got to tone it down for the wife, because let's just face it, we don't want to deal with our wives.
Right. And you should be proud of yourself. So, huge congratulations to you for having a sponsor and everything already.
So I appreciate that. They approached me. I didn't approach them. Again, being new to the podcasting field, but with all of us having experience in the radio market, I was like, I know I got to jump at this, but then again, I didn't want to be handcuffed again to one particular sponsor. But, we made a gentleman's agreement. My sponsor, which is Celebrity Events by Lisa Gandia out of New York. She is a promoter, publisher. She does a lot of great things, not only in New York, but across the United States and other continents, with booking tours for rock bands. So, and again, I thank you guys for the kind words.
No, man, all I just want to do is just tell you congratulations on the sponsor as well. I was like, holy cow. I was like, he did it. I was like, he nailed it. I was like, that's fantastic. That's awesome. And then I told Rick, I was like, I'm slightly jealous.
And it's hard not to
be.
Well,
guys, you know what? I was jealous of you guys, and straight up, when you guys started Lights, Camera, Pop, I was like, man, I want to be on their show, but I don't want to be an ass just because we're friends and say, you got to have me as a guest, or I want to be a guest, But yeah. The timing was, I don't want to say right, unfortunately, for Ozzy passing away, but you guys just reached out to me, and
you were the
that's
first
what started
person.
It. And I am forever grateful for you two.
I appreciate that. But yeah, you were the very first person. When Ozzy had passed, I texted Mike. I says, all right, so let's do an Ozzy tribute. We got to get Joe involved, because I knew, like, especially like your rock background. That was a good episode. I really enjoyed that one. I feel like I was a little bummed out because I look back, and now we've been using Zoom, and I look back, and we did it in an hour. And I think that show could have at least lasted another half hour, 45 minutes. And
agreed.
It's like we need to George Lucas that shit and like go back and redo that whole episode and just add new stuff to it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but we can't have George Lucas though, because he tends to screw up his own work. All right, sorry about that.
Oh no, hey, that's a valid point.
Yeah, he became too PG.
So yeah.
Well, guys, I want to thank you. I guess I'm guesting on your podcast, and you're guesting on my podcast, and we're cross guesting.
If that's a word. Cross-pollinating.
cross-pollinating. Yes, we'll go with that. I like that. All right, guys. Well, hey, again, I want to thank you for having me again on your show.
Thank you for having us on yours. Our friends are really the ones that matter, the most. I mean, the ones that support us are just rock stars, the MVPs of our show. Joe, where can everybody find you at?
Actually, just set everything up new on social media. It is at Youth Gone Mild PC, and believe me, my podcast is not PC as in politically correct. It's at Youth Gone Mild PC on all social media platforms. If you want to listen to the podcast, I just was able to get onto Apple Podcasts, which is awesome. I'm on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, TuneIn, and Deezer.
Nice.
And how about you guys?
Well, we are on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Podbean. You can hear us weekly. We're there. Eventually, we're gonna cross over to YouTube. We talk about it all the time.
Let me just interject. I am also on YouTube and Amazon. But to get you guys out there on YouTube, let me just say this. I have the majority of my listeners on YouTube, and it's so easy to do.
Sweet.
Yeah, I definitely will be doing that.
Yeah,
I know through.
Yeah, we want to load all our stuff up and get a presence up there. We just haven't done it yet. We talk about it, but we just haven't done it yet. We're everywhere else. We should be there.
On Instagram, so you can find us at Lights Camera Pop Pod, but Lights Camera Pop on Facebook. And I just want to give a quick little plug too, that my daughter and I just dropped the first episode of my second podcast that I started with her, called The House of Mouse Musings. So that's on the same all platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, blah blah blah.
You can follow me on TikTok and Instagram as Nomad Comics. You can find me that. Looks for the skull with the cross swords.
It's been fun. I feel like we are back in our college days.
Oh
my shooting the breeze on 91.9 WBCS Power 92, not WCAL Power 92.
Yeah, I mean, we have more control over here. We can curse if we want.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I got suspended off of the radio, because it was 3 a.m. in the morning, and I didn't think anybody was listening, and I started playing at a medium pace from Adam Sandler.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so yeah.
I remember this.
I got pulled.
But just to kind of go on that same realm, when you were talking about getting suspended at the college radio station, that happened to me too. All good DJs get suspended. I'll tell you, and I'll make this short and sweet. I got suspended. I'll never forget my first suspension. We had the mic that was hanging over our heads by the soundboard. I was introducing Collective Soul's Shine, and the mic literally just dropped and hit me in the balls, and I said, fuck. And I got suspended for that. And probably my proudest moment of suspension is when I invited the entire cheerleading class of 96, okay, to the radio station. And remember, we were only allowed 2 guests, not like 12. And you know what? That suspension, I won't go into detail, but that suspension, man, it was worth every week I was suspended.
Well, I got suspended because I was literally carpet bombing Cal with F-bombs, over the air. Because I just didn't care anymore, and I just wanted to see what would happen. And the graduate assistant came in. She's like, "Have you just said the F word 9 times?" I was like, 9. Try 14. And
you must have not listened at that point.
She's like, "That's it. You're suspended." I'm like, "I'm the program director. I'll suspend myself tomorrow. But until then, I'm going to finish my fucking show."
There was 15.
There's 15.
Those were the days.
Yes,
guys.
they were. On
that
note,
we'll wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up. And thanks everybody for tuning in this week of this crossover of Youth Gone Mild and Lights Camera Pop.
All right, guys. See you later.
And that's it. Fork Pit. If you know, you know. You know, that could get a little bit old after a while. It's the third time I've been doing the ending of an interview with "That's it, Fork Pit." I always said it was a Berg thing, but I don't know. But I think it's cool because I've been saying that since I was a little kid. Wait, it's my podcast. I'm just going to do it anyway. And speaking of the Berg, my guys, Rich Urick and Mike Smith, I gotta thank you. Thank you for being a guest on the Youth Gone Mild crossover podcast. As well as I want to thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your Lights, Camera, Pop podcast. And I gotta say, Rich and Mike, I don't want to give them a swelled head, but they know a lot of shit. From horror flicks to Walt Disney to comic books. And all I know is music. I'll be all right. I just taking a moment here to realize that I don't know it all. So yeah, okay, I'm back. Yeah, I can tell my wife now that I am definitely not a know-it-all. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Mike. You opened my eyes to that. Hope you enjoyed today's episode as we talked about what it's like being a podcaster. And I'm going to throw in here that, yes, I am an amateur podcaster. It's better than being an immature podcaster. Well, wait, I could be that too. Anyway, if you like what you heard, tell a friend. If you didn't like what you hear, just keep it to yourself. I don't want bad news spreading. I'm going to ask you to follow us on all social media platforms. It's at Youth Gone Mild PC. And believe me, the PC does not stand for politically correct. It stands for podcast. You can check me out wherever you get your streaming services on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, Amazon, YouTube, Pandora, TuneIn, and Deezer. And being the bad friend that I am, I totally forgot where you can find Lights, Camera, Pop podcast. I know I'm going to hear some shit about that from Rich and Mike. Search them up on Spotify. I know they're on there. Lights, Camera, Pop, again, podcast. Yeah, guys, I'm that asshole friend. Sorry. I'm Gen X Joe. Thank you for listening to the Youth Gone Mild podcast and the crossover podcast, Lights, Camera, Pop. Remember, everyone, rock loud, live proud, peace out, and props everyone for listening. I'm Gen X Joe, and this has been the Youth Gone Mild podcast.